There are stories in Hollywood that fade over time, and then there are the ones that return years later, heavier, darker, and impossible to ignore. At 62, Demi Moore is finally speaking with a clarity she never had in her 20s, 30s, or even 40s. For the first time, she is revealing what truly happened behind the closed doors of her marriage to Ashton Kutcher, the secrets she carried, the pain she hid, and the truth she tried to protect for far too long. What she kept silent for nearly 2 decades has now become the confession that is reshaping everything we thought we knew about their love story. It began as a love that looked like a miracle. When Demi Moore met Ashton Kutcher in May 2003, she was 40 years old and still piecing together the shattered remains of her divorce from Bruce Willis. Ashton, just 25 at the time, entered her life with a kind of warmth and charm she hadn't felt in years. He listened, he admired, he adored, at least that's how it seemed. Their first long conversation lasted 8 hours, an instant emotional bond that made Demi believe she had found someone who accepted not just her fame, but her broken parts too. In a matter of weeks, Ashton met her daughters and even Bruce Willis, something nearly unheard of in Hollywood ex-spouse dynamics. By the time they married on September 24, 2005, the world had already labeled them the perfect example of a modern fairy tale. They blended families, built a production company together, and publicly praised one another as if their relationship had rewritten the rules of love. But behind that image, a private tragedy had already begun. Just 2 years before their wedding, Demi had suffered a devastating miscarriage at 6 months pregnant. They had already chosen a name, Chaplain Ray. The loss shook them to the core. Demi blamed herself. She had been sober for nearly 20 years, but she later admitted she had occasionally smoked and drank early in the pregnancy, and she never stopped wondering if she caused the death of her own child. That guilt became an invisible wall between them, even as they tried IVF, fertility treatments, and adoption. Ashton said the loss made him realize he was ready for fatherhood, but Demi felt it pushed her into a place of emotional darkness she had never experienced before. This tragedy was the first crack in their marriage, a wound neither of them knew how to heal. As time would prove, the heartbreak wasn't the darkest secret she would have to carry for him. The miscarriage left Demi Moore in a fragile, vulnerable place, and instead of healing, she began slipping into old patterns she had fought so hard to escape. After nearly 2 decades of sobriety, she relapsed. What began as a drink during moments of grief turned into a slow collapse: alcohol, prescription pills, and self-blame that hollowed her from the inside out. Ashton tried to comfort her at first, but over time he grew distant in ways she didn't fully understand. The young man who once felt like her savior now felt unreachable. Desperate to save their marriage, Demi began doing anything she thought would make him stay. In her 2019 memoir, Inside Out, she revealed one of the deepest wounds she had carried for years. Ashton had asked for threesomes, and she agreed, believing that giving him what he wanted would fix the distance between them. Instead, every compromise left her feeling smaller, emptier, and more disconnected from herself. She later admitted that these decisions left her ashamed, confused, and questioning her own worth. The tension between them escalated as Ashton leaned more heavily into the idea that their marriage should be open-minded and modern. While Demi felt she was losing her identity, her attempts to be everything he wanted slowly erased the woman she once was. As she spiraled into addiction, Ashton pulled further away, deepening her fear that she was no longer enough. Behind closed doors, the emotional distance became a silent storm. Ashton traveled more, stayed out later, and began living like a man who no longer felt bound to his vows. Demi sensed it: the late-night absences, the excuses, the growing coldness in his voice, all hinting at a truth she wasn't ready to face. Her daughters began to worry, watching their mother shrink under the weight of fear, guilt, and emotional abandonment. What had once been a home full of blended family laughter turned into a space of tension and unspoken pain. But the darkest blow was still waiting, and when it came, it shattered what little remained of her strength. By 2011, 6 years into their marriage, Demi Moore was holding on by a thread, still trying to present a united front for the public, pretending everything was stable, loving, and whole. But her world collapsed on September 24, 2011, the day that should have been their 6th wedding anniversary. Instead of celebrating, she woke up to a nightmare, a Google alert revealing that Ashton Kutcher had spent the night with a 22-year-old woman named Sarah Leal. The news hit her like a physical blow. What made it worse was that Demi had seen the girl before, bold enough to hand Ashton her phone number at a bowling alley in front of Demi and her daughter. It wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. Ashton's confession made it undeniable, he had cheated. But the darkest part wasn't the affair itself, it was his excuse. He told her that the threesomes she had agreed to earlier in their marriage had blurred the lines, as if her attempt to make him happy somehow justified the betrayal. For Demi, those words cut deeper than the cheating, they turned her sacrifices into blame. And it wasn't the only affair. She later learned about another woman, 21-year-old Brittany Jones, an earlier infidelity she hadn't fully understood at the time. Ashton had been drifting away long before she realized the distance was permanent. Just days after the scandal broke, Demi was forced to stand beside Ashton at an anti-trafficking charity event, pretending everything was fine while inside she was breaking. The public didn't see the shaking hands backstage, the panic she tried to hide, or the way she struggled to breathe under the pressure of maintaining a lie she could no longer bear. On November 17, 2011, she finally announced their separation, saying she needed to stay true to her values, words simple on the surface but heavy with the weight of everything she had endured. What followed wasn't healing, it was the darkest descent of her life. After nearly 20 years of sobriety, the betrayal pushed her into a full collapse. On January 23, 2012, she suffered a seizure during a party at her Benedict Canyon home, brought on by a dangerous mix of synthetic cannabis, nitrous oxide, and weeks of starvation-level dieting. Guests watched in shock as she convulsed on the floor, and the 911 call marked the beginning of her darkest years. In the months that followed, her addiction deepened, up to a dozen Vicodin pills a day, chased with vodka and energy drinks. She became obsessed with losing weight, staring at herself in the mirror for hours, convinced she needed to be thinner, smaller, invisible. Her weight dropped to around 102 pounds. Exhaustion, malnutrition, and drugs triggered more seizures and health scares. She withdrew completely, disappearing from public life and avoiding everyone she loved. The collapse didn't just affect her, it destroyed her relationship with her daughters. Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah described those years as terrifying. They didn't recognize the woman she had become. She spoke differently, moved differently, and seemed absent. Tallulah later said her mother felt like a monster, not out of cruelty, but because addiction had changed her so drastically. The pain became so overwhelming that the girls distanced themselves for their own safety. In 2012, they cut off contact. None attended her 50th birthday. She missed milestones, achievements, and everyday moments. The silence lasted nearly 3 years. In September 2012, Demi entered Cirque Lodge in Utah, a luxury rehab costing $150,000 a month, but even that didn't repair the relationships. Healing didn't begin until 2015, when Tallulah, freshly out of rehab herself, reached out. As Demi slowly rebuilt her life, she began speaking honestly through therapy, rehabilitation, and reconnecting with her daughters. In her 2019 memoir Inside Out, one truth kept resurfacing, the truth she had protected for more than a decade. It wasn't just the cheating or the threesomes, it was deeper. Demi felt she had been manipulated into believing she wasn't enough, not young enough, not wild enough, not modern enough. Ashton often made comments about their age difference, joking in ways that didn't feel like jokes, suggesting monogamy wasn't practical and subtly pushing her to lower her boundaries. Demi admitted she accepted things she never would have before, not because she wanted to, but because she feared losing him. This emotional erosion became the darkest secret of their marriage. She hid how deeply she was compromising herself until she barely recognized who she had become. The miscarriage haunted her for years, and she revealed Ashton didn't fully understand her grief, which made her blame herself even more. She carried the loss as her failure while he moved forward. Even after the separation, Demi stayed silent about the cheating, the threesomes, and the emotional manipulation, trying to protect him without second thoughts.